We are at Samach Tes Amid Base 69b, 5-6 lines from the bottom. In our Mishnah, we saw there was a distinction between somebody who didn't know about Shabbos at all, where they have to bring one sin offering for all of the Shabbos that they missed and that they transgressed, versus someone who knew about Shabbos and didn't know about particular week, and therefore they're going to bring one korban for every Shabbos that they missed. And so the Gemara is going to ask, how do we know that there's such a distinction, that you can bring one korban for having missed multiple weeks, versus that there's, if you miss multiple Shabbos, that you're going to bring a korban for each one of the weeks? So how do where do we see in the Torah that there is such a distinction? Amar Nachman, Amar Rabba Bar Abu, there are two verses in the Torah. It says, V'shamaru b'nei Yisrael as ha-Shabbos. B'nei Yisrael guarded Shabbos, singular. Uchsev v'es Shabso saite shmoru. And my plural, Shabbos, says, you shall guard. Now, guarding is not to transgress. And it says, V'shamaru b'nei Yisrael as ha-Shabbos, singular, and it says that it says it in the plural. Ha-ketzad. Why does the Torah say it in two different terms? How do you have it that you're going to guard a single Shabbos versus you're going to guard multiple Shabbos? Or in the transgression would be that you transgress a single Shabbos or transgress multiple Shabbos. The first is that you will know the concept of Shabbos, and therefore you're going to have one guarding for the many Shabbos. Because the knowledge of Shabbos gives you the ability to guard all the Shabbos. And in the transgression, it would be that not knowing one Shabbos will be that you transgress many Shabbos, and therefore you bring a single korban for the many Shabbos that you missed. And my Shabbos you will guard, plural. Now, how is that? Shmira achas Shabbos or Shabbos, the knowledge of each week that which day is the Shabbos. And if you didn't know that, then the transgression will be each week a separate transgression of Shabbos, and therefore a separate korban for each. Maskeflo Nachman Yitzchak Adarabba. Nachman Yitzchak challenged and says, no, quite the contrary, I think, is the meaning. And he's not disagreeing with the concept, just that the verses are coming for the opposite role. Ibn Mistaber, he says it's just a logical thing that it would go the other way around. Guard the Shabbos, meaning each individual Shabbos you shall guard, and therefore there's the transgression would bring a korban for each. And guard my Shabbos as plural means do a single act that will help you guard all the Shabbos, meaning know the ability, the concept of Shabbos. And if you miss that concept, you will transgress one transgression for all the Shabbos. Same concept, just which way the meaning of the verse is more likely to mean. We're now at the top of Ayin Amen Aleph 78. Maishna Reisha, Maishna Sefer. So we saw that there's somebody who doesn't know about Shabbos, but knows the prohibitions of Shabbos, simply doesn't know this week, is going to transgress only a single transgression, missing inadvertently, meaning the one mistake is not knowing Shabbos, and therefore they're going to bring a single korban, even though they did multiple prohibited acts. Whereas if somebody doesn't knows that today is Shabbos, but doesn't know specific particular acts that are prohibited, they will bring a korban for each one of the acts. So Maishna Reisha, Maishna Sefer. What's the distinction between the first and second case? Amar Rav Safra, and in some texts it's Rav Chisda. Kan miyadiya Shabbos uparish, kan miyadiyas malacha uparish. So he sees that in what would help him stop the act. If somebody told him, hey, it's Shabbos today. In other words, he already knows that cooking is prohibited on Shabbos, and he already knows that planting is prohibited on Shabbos. And he's doing these things. And someone says, hey, it's Shabbos morning. That would be the reason for him to say, oh, no. Oh, thanks. And he'll stop. So then it's a single thing that's making him stop. And therefore, the mistake is in the single is one. And he brings one carbon. Whereas in the second case, each individual act is what would stop him from working, and therefore he says, hey, you're not allowed to cook today. Oh, that's right. Hey, you're not allowed to plant today. Oh, that's right. So each one has a separate idea that the knowledge, the becoming aware, and that's what is the distinction between them, and each act is going to be a separate carbon, a separate sin offering. Amle Nachman, klum parish mishabes al mashum malachas. Klum parish malachas al mashum Shabbos. Rabbi Nachman challenges, and we're going to see this later in the daf again, the concept of that he would stop on account of one point of knowledge and not the other is not correct. Nobody stops planting on Tuesday. So even if you tell them, hey, you're not allowed to plant, it's because it's Shabbos. So they're intertwined. Hey, it's Shabbos today. So what? You're not allowed to plant. Hey, you're planting, and you're not allowed to plant today. Why? Because it's Shabbos. Either way, they're going to be intertwined, and therefore the idea, the knowledge, the becoming aware is not only about the prohibited act, or not only about which day of the week it is. It's the combination of the two. So rather, Rav Nachman says, rather, the reason that the Torah obligates the person in the sin offering is because of the lapse of knowledge, the mistake, that which the ha'alama, that which was unbeknownst to them. Hasam chadash gaga. There, in the first case, the person knew what's prohibited on Shabbos. The information they were missing was that today is Shabbos. So that's a single thing, single shgaga. Hacha, tu v'shgaga is happy. But if the person knows it's Shabbos and simply forgot that you can't cook on Shabbos and you can't slaughter on Shabbos and you can't skin an animal on Shabbos or whatever else it may be, those individual pieces of information are what's missing. So again, the shagaga, the mistake, the ha'alama, that which is unbeknownst, that's what is what the carbon is brought for. And in each case, the carbon is going to be for the number or for the primary mistake that's there or lapse. In the first case, the lapse is not knowing today is Shabbos, so that's singular. Even if they did many different prohibitions, that's on account of the one lapse. They didn't know today was Shabbos. Versus in the second case, they knew it was Shabbos. They simply forgot that these particular acts are prohibited, so there's a carbon for each one of the acts. So this person would bring a sin offering for each one of the prohibited acts that they transgressed. So how do we know this? The Torah says many times, don't do prohibited acts or creative acts, don't do malacha, don't do any malacha. How do we know that it's not one category and there's one sin offering for all of the categories of malacha? How do we know that there are 39 categories of which each one will have its own sin offering? Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel says this concept of chiluk malachas, that each one of the prohibited acts is its own category and its own prohibition, we learn from Mechalaleha Mosimas. The Torah says, you shall. In this one is it. The Torah speaks about Shabbos many times in different forms. In Shemos in Exodus Lamed Aleph Yudalid 31:14, the Torah says, "And you will guard the Shabbos to keep it holy, for she is holy to you. Anybody that desecrates her or makes her chol, anybody that desecrates her, mos yumas, will die. So usually we translate that will surely die. Will be, but mos yumas, will die. It's a double term, because anyone who does work on this day, their soul will be cut off from amongst their nation. Now, that because key in the verse is odd. It says the person will surely be put to death because their soul will be cut off. That doesn't really follow. Not every time that there is kares, that an act is punishable by the soul being cut off from its nation and the source, will it equal that, therefore, they will be put to death. So it doesn't follow. So mechalemos, you must mean something else, that there are multiple deaths there, and that's why it says in the plural. Mos yumas. Now, as we understand, you can't be put to death multiple times, but primarily the Torah already tells us elsewhere that Shabbos is a capital offense. So the Torah tells us multiple capital punishments for one act. Now, as we understand, you can have multiple fines, you can have multiple punishments, but you can't have multiple deaths. So, even though that this is about someone who intentionally transgressed, but it can't be referring to that. So what is it referring to? It can't be referring to somebody who does so intentionally, because somebody can only put to death once, and as we're about to see, the Torah already tells us that there's capital punishment for Shabbos. Because the Torah already says that also in Exodus, this is in 35b, 35:2. 6 days a week, work shall be done, and on the seventh day it shall be holy to you, a Shabbos. Anyone who does work in it, malacha, yumas, will be put to death. So Tanei in English, so must be, this is referring to shogeg, somebody who inadvertently transgressed. So this verse in Shemos 31, there, the Torah is referring to somebody who inadvertently transgressed. My yumas b'mamen. And what does it mean? The double death. They will be put to death. They will put to death. That means finances. That they're going to have to bring an atonement for their soul multiple times in a korban. That they're going to pay for multiple offerings in the Beis Hamikdash, a sin offering for each one of the acts. And this is how the verse is then read. You shall guard Shabbos, meaning don't transgress, for it is holy to you. And somebody who makes this chol, makes this weekday, makes this mundane, meaning they don't take it seriously and don't realize that they are transgressing inadvertently, most yumas, they will have to pay multiple sin offerings because anybody that does work on this day, their soul will be cut off. And that follows, because as we've seen before, that anything that when done intentionally brings kares, the punishment is so severe that their soul is cut off from its source, then you bring a chatas offering for the inadvertent, for the shogeg. So therefore it follows. The pasuk says, Machaleh mos yumas, anybody that transgresses, by taking it too lightly, meaning they inadvertently transgressed. They didn't take the time to understand all the prohibitions, and therefore they transgressed. Most yumas, they have to bring a korban, and says it in the plural, in multiple times to tell you that they're going to bring multiple sin offerings for each one of the acts that they did, because this is a kares punishable act, and therefore Shmuel says we see. Why would there be multiple chatas offerings for Shabbos? Because each one of the acts gets their own punishment. And Gemara says, okay, that is a good source, because that's the only way to read that verse, because otherwise it doesn't follow Machaleh mos yumas ki, because it's a kares. So, but there's another source. We already know this concept of chiluk malachos. Of that each malacha is its own transgression from someplace else. So for this, I'm just going to tell you the beginning of the Parsha Vayakel There are three verses. I'm going to read them now so that we can see the oddity in the psukim. The Torah says, Moshe gathered Bnei Yisrael, and he said to them, these are the things, the matters, the words that Hashem has commanded you to do. 6 days a week you shall do work. All work shall be done. And this is they're building the Mishkan, right? So they're building the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and 6 days they're going to do the work. And on the seventh day shall be to you holy. It is a Shabbat Shabboso, a rest of rest to Hashem. Anybody that does a transgression, a work, a creative work in them, it is a capital punishment, a capital crime. And then it says, you shall not light a fire in all of your dwelling places on Shabbos. So wherever you are, you cannot light a fire on Shabbos. Now it says immediately prior to that, anybody that has done malacha in them, it's punishable by death. And before that, it just said 6 days a week you can do work, but on the seventh day you cannot. It's a day of rest for you, Shabbos, Shabbosim. So the progression is peculiar. It says you shall not do work. It is Shabbos, you must rest. And anybody that doesn't it transgresses the capital crime. And then it says, and anybody that lights a fire. So what's that fire thing? Chiluk malachas me'echa nafkele l'Rabbi Nosson. Why didn't he learn Chiluk malacha, this concept that the malachas are all separate from where Rabbi Nosson learned it? The Tani Rabbi Nosson says, Lo savara eish b'chomesh v'seich b'yom HaShabbos. It says, you shall not light a fire or ignite a fire in your dwelling places on Shabbos. Why did the Torah teach that? And already said in the line before that, don't do any work, and if you do, it's punishable by death. It says these are the manners. And as we saw early in the Masechta, we're going to see again now that Eila Hadavarim alludes to the 39 categories of work on Shabbos, and it says Sheshos Yamim Taseh Malacha. And it says 6 days a week you can work. Devarim hadavarim eila hadavarim. Devarim means two things. It says plural matters. Hadavarim tells you a third matter. The hey at the beginning tells you the extra matter. And eila hadavarim, these are the things. Eila is a numerical value of 36 plus 3 is 39. Those are the 39. Elu shloshim v'tesha malacha shenamar Moshe b'Sinai. So here is a hint in the Torah to the 39 categories of malacha. Now, two words, Eila Hadavarim, these are the matters of superfluous. Of course, Moshe could have just said, this is, Kach tziva Hashem, so did Hashem command. Not these are the matters, or these are the items that Hashem commanded. And so Eila Hadavarim is superfluous, and it hints to these 39 malachas. Great. So I may have thought they're one category, the one concept of no work, and so therefore there are 39 subcategories to the one category of no work, and therefore if somebody transgresses, they bring one sin offering. Therefore, the Torah says elsewhere. In regards to Shabbos, it says, you shall rest from plowing and harvesting.
Where did we get from 36 to 39?
The word Eila is 36, numerical value. Devarim, plural, is
38.
38. And hey, extra hey, Hadavarim is the 39.
How does the hey get to be another one?
Because it's an extra word there. Every part of the superfluous word is going to teach us something.
So it's not because it's hey yediyah, it's just that it's
extra, right?
Extra, yeah.
In any case, obviously, as the text of the Gemara says, it's not. We don't know the 39 from there, but rather the 39 malachas, which we know from Sinai, from Moshe, is alluded to here. In any case, so the Torah says, "B'char shevakatzet tishbos," you shall cease harvest and plowing and harvest. So these are two. You see that these two are one of the 39 malachas, each one of them, and we see that you have to stop those on Shabbos. So maybe those are individual acts because the Torah mentions them individually, and since the Torah mentions them individually, they are independent. They are separate acts, but all the other 37 are one general concept. And for the rest, there's one sin offering for anyone or all of those combined. Therefore, the Torah says, do not light a fire. Havara b'chalal haisa. In general, we say, ha'avara, the lighting of fire was included in the verse beforehand where it says, cease work, or where the Torah says all over the place, you shall not do malacha. Don't do creative work. Or it says in the pasuk before, not lighting the fire. If you do work, it's punishable by death. It's not all of the 39 categories, but any, and therefore any of them obligates you in a karma, in a sin offering. So why did the Torah separate the fire? It's already included in the mention beforehand, in the general concept beforehand. So lahakish elel, it's to tell you that all of the 39 categories are like fire. To tell you ma'avara shehi av malacha, just as igniting a fire is a principal concept of prohibited work. And since the Torah separated, it has its own sin offering. So too, av kolshu av malacha chayav v'neleh b'fnei atzma. So to any of the other 38 principal concepts of work, so the other categories are all going to have their own prohibition and their own sin offering when transgressed. So Rabbi Nassan says that the Torah separated and singled out igniting a fire, just to pull one of the 39 out and to say, just as this one was separated out to tell you that it's its own transgression, so too all of the 39 are their own transgressions. And essentially, the Chalek Yatzis, he learns that at the beginning of Vayakel, the Torah says, rest on Shabbos, don't transgress it. If you do, it's a capital punishment, a capital crime, and don't ignite a fire on Shabbos, to tell you that just as we single out this one, the previous verse also, in all the categories that are included in Malacha, will each be its own prohibition. So Gemara says, so why didn't Shmuel follow that? Why didn't he use that source? Shmuel Savalaka Rabbi Yossi. He says that no, the reason why Shabbos was separated was like igniting a fire was separated from the rest of the work in that pasuk is like Rabbi Yossi. The Amar ha'avara lilav yatzis. He says that ha'avara, the prohibition of igniting a fire on Shabbos, is not to tell you that each of the other malachas are separate, its own prohibition, but rather to tell you that this is a lesser degree prohibition. All the others have kares. This one is only a lav alone. And to tell you that it's a lesser degree prohibition. Netanya, as we learned, ha'avara lilav yatzis is different Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says that this was the igniting of fire was separated to tell you that it's a lesser degree prohibition. It is a lalav, that there's no kares, it's not punishable, it's not a capital punishment, as the verse beforehand says. Rather, this one is a prohibition of its own. Don't ignite a fire, but it is not punishable in the same way as the rest of Shabbos. Rabbi Nassan, no, it's there to teach you that all of the prohibitions are there, all the 39 categories of prohibition are their own prohibitions. But typically, well, why did Rabbi Nassan need this verse to tell you that it's separate? Why didn't he follow, like we said earlier, like Shmuel said, that we can learn it from the fact that it said, mos you must, mechalemos you must, that those that transgress Shabbos will be put to death, which is plural, multiple times, obviously can't be. And it says ki because it is punishable by kares, by the soul being cut off from the nation. And it already says elsewhere that it's punishable by death. So this is a superfluous verse, must be talking about that there are multiple karbanos, as we said earlier. The Tanya, Rabbi Yossi v'asa achas mehena. So why did Shmuel need that teaching? Why don't we have the teaching of Rabbi Yossi itself? The Tanya, as we learned, Rabbi Yossi says v'asa achas mehena. The Torah says in regards to the sin offering, if somebody transgressed that which is not to be transgressed and did one of the many. Now, the both of those words are superfluous. It could have said, and somebody did of the transgressions which shall not be done. V'asa, and it would be sufficient. Why? Me'achas mehena. Of one and of the many. That's it's odd and superfluous. So Gemara says, one is to tell you that sometimes you transgress and you only bring one sin offering. Mehena of the many, sometimes you transgress and you bring many sin offerings. Rabbi Yossi explained. My time at Rabbi Yossi. What is the understanding of Rabbi Yossi? That's the way Rashi translates this. Usually my time means what's the reason. It means what's the understanding. How does he understand this verse? Achas me achas, heina me heina. He says there are four teachings here because each one of the words are the two words are extra, and each one starts off with it of, and the of is limiting to only part of. And so that teaches us something as well. So sometimes you have one transgression for many acts. Sometimes you have many transgressions for one act. Achas, one, and that's what we just said. You can have, if you didn't know about Shabbos, even though you did many acts that are prohibited, you have one transgression for the many acts. If you knew it was Shabbos, and you didn't know particular acts, so then for the one transgression on Shabbos, meaning the multiple acts, but the one concept of Shabbos, there are going to be many sin offerings to be brought. So that's the one and the many. Achas Shimon, when you did one act, as the Torah we'll see later, one of the 39 malachas is not writing on Shabbos. Minimum writing is going to be 2 characters. It's possible for someone intending to write an entire name, which will have 5, 6, 7 characters. And they end up only writing 2 of those characters, which is not a complete act. But nevertheless, they transgress because those 2 characters themselves have a meaning, and therefore they ended up writing something else than they started to that they intended, but nevertheless is a complete act in as much as that it made something. So if the single act would be writing the word Shimon, which is Shin Mem, Ayin Vav Nun. Me'achas of the one, and now we turn the page to 70b, Ayin Amid Beis, Shem Mi Shimon. That if they intended to write Shimon and stopped after the first 2 letters, writing the word Shem or Sham or any other form of that, Shem meaning a name or Sham meaning there, but it is a Hebrew word, and so the 2 characters, which is the minimum, will end up being a word, and so they transgress Shabbos, even though they only did part of a single act, but it's a complete act, and it's going to count. Heina would be avos, them being the principal acts, the 39 categories. Mehena of those, the of to tell you that not only if you did the actual thing of the actual category, such as we said, seeding, putting sowing a seed in the ground, planting, But mehena would be of those, is told even something similar to it, is something that's within that category, such as watering. So it told us, achashi hena. So the Gemara now explains the first concept, one which is many, Zodin Shabbos, Vishigas Malacha. He knew that it was Shabbos, but forgot each one of the acts. So therefore, there are going to be multiple prohibitions for each. Hena shi achas, one which is many, which is one. Shigas Shabbos, somebody who forgot today is Shabbos. Zodin Malachas. He knew that you can't plant and till and water and etc. on Shabbos, but he forgot today was Shabbos. So why didn't Shmuel? So this is the end of that halacha. So we have a source for Rabbi Yossi to separate each one of the prohibitions from the achas and hena section of these two superfluous words. Shmuel achashi hena v'hena shi achas lemashmuel. Shmuel doesn't use this source, but use the source rather that we had right at the beginning of this of Mechalelem Osumas, as we explained that. It follows that the meaning of the verse would be that they will bring a sin offering, multiple sin offerings, and that's why it says most yumas they will put to death. They will be put to death, and you can be put to death multiple times. And we already know that they are that it's a capital punishment from other verses. So this must be to tell you that there are multiple karbanos. Shmuel learns it from there because he doesn't agree to the meaning of me achas, mehena, the one, the many, to mean that there is a single transgression for the many acts, or there are many transgressions for the one act. So that's Shmuel's source. So we now have three places, three opinions of where the Torah indicates to us that each one of the 39 categories of malacha is its own prohibition. Even though that they're a part of the category, the concept of no work on Shabbos, each one is its own, and therefore, if somebody transgresses one or multiple of the 39 categories, for each one of the categories, it's its own chatas offering. Rava asked Rav Nachman, what happens if he didn't know it was Shabbos and didn't know this is prohibited? So on account of Shabbos, he should bring a sin offering, or account of each one of the works. So he forgot it was Shabbos this morning. He also forgot that you're not allowed to water your plants on Shabbos and that you're not allowed to prune them. So, well, that would be of the same halacha. You're not allowed to harvest. So he's watering it, and also some of the fruits are ripe, and he plucks them. So he's harvesting as well as planting all on the same day, and he forgot that both of those are prohibited. So now we have a single forgetfulness of Shabbos. The lapse is on Shabbos. It's also a lapse on the individual acts. Amalei harei helam Shabbos biyadei ve'inachai velachas. Said, well, he forgot about Shabbos, so he's only obligated the one sin offering. So he says, no, adarabah, quite the contrary. Harei helam melachas biyadei. Each one of the works are forgotten to him. That they were a ha'alama in the individual works, and so therefore each one should be a separate prohibition, a transgression, and a separate korban. And you should need to bring a sin offering for each one. Ela Maravashi Chazina. So Rav Ashi says, we have to see what would have made him stop mid-track. Imashum Shabbos kaparish. If somebody said, it's Shabbos today, and he would stop, Harei Helam Shabbos biyadu. So then what was forgotten to him, the lapse was in Shabbos, that recognizing that today was Shabbos. And therefore he's only obligated in bringing a sin offering for the one. The imashum malacha kaparish. However, if somebody says, you can't plant, you're not allowed to water. You're not allowed to water that, or you're not allowed to harvest today, and you're plucking that fruit, that vegetable. So then, if he would stop for that, so he's stopping for each one of the work, and therefore, we see what his lapse is. What was forgotten to him was the melacha, and therefore he's going to have to bring a sin offering for each one of them separately. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. So Ravina said to Ravashi, I don't know what you're talking about. Kolum parish mishabes, elam malachas. As we saw earlier in the daf, the only reason he would stop watering his plant is because it's Shabbos. So yes, you may be telling him you're not allowed to water. When? Tuesday? No, he understands what you're saying is you're not allowed to water your plant on Shabbos, and you just did, and so stop. And therefore, the sin offering would not be on account of the individual prohibition, but the general concept of Shabbos. And Klum Parish Malachas El Mishum Shabbos. And the same in the reverse, he's not going to stop if you tell him today is Shabbos. So what? Oh, it's Shabbos, and therefore you're not allowed to water the plant. Either way, whatever he's going to stop, it's going to be a combination of the two, because it's Shabbos and because that is a prohibited act. So the ha'alama, the mistake is equal. Earlier we saw where he forgot one of them. So there he said, the Gemara said, no, the ha'alama, the shugaga itself is actually, where is his mistake? Because there, in the case was that either he forgot it was Shabbos but knew the prohibitions, or he knew that it was Shabbos but forgot the prohibitions. Here, he doesn't know either of them. He forgot both of them. And so everybody should agree that those acts are intertwined. The forgetting, the ha'alama, the lapse in knowledge that today is Shabbos is going to be fundamental to any of the prohibitions that they forgot as well. Ela loishna. So therefore, there's no distinction, and the fundamental is the lapse of Shabbos, and that's a single lapse, and so there's a single prohibition and a single achatas offering. Tanan, we learned avos malachas arbaim chasa achas. We learned that there are 39, 39, or as the Mishnah says, 40 minus 1 of the malachas, and we talked about that earlier in the Masechta. We said, why did the Mishnah have to tell us the number? Just tell us the list. We can count if we want. Why did the Mishnah have to tell us that it's 40 minus 1? Rabbi Yochanan said, the reason that the Mishnah told us the count was to tell you that in case somebody did all of them in one day, on one Shabbos, in one lapse, there's going to be a chatas offering for each one. So here's the number. The maximum chatas offerings you can have for Shabbos is 39. If you say that he forgot about Shabbos and he forgot about the various prohibitions, so it makes sense that it's possible that somebody would still have 39 separate prohibitions, even though that he forgot the one principal concept, that today is Shabbos. But he also forgot each one of the separate individual categories of prohibition. And yet he's going to bring a sin offering for each one of the transgressions, for each one of the categories of acts. That's why the Mishnah had to tell us the number. Shapir. So then it makes sense. Eliyam is Helam Shabbos biyodo. But if somebody didn't know today was Shabbos, and also forgot the prohibited acts, so then he only brings one. So what is the category for? When would we say that for each one of the categories he's going to bring a separate chatas offering? It's going to have to be where he remembers today is Shabbos, but forgot each one of the prohibitions. So if you tell me that Helam Shabbos biyad, if he has a lapse in today being Shabbos, he only brings one sin offering. So then the Mishnah must be talking about where it's indicating that you're going to bring 39 separate sin offerings. It's going to have to be where you intentionally, meaning you know that today is Shabbos, and yet You forgot each one of the 39 categories of malacha. You didn't know that plowing and tilling the ground was prohibited. You didn't know that planting was prohibited. You didn't know that harvesting was prohibited. You didn't know that shechting an animal was prohibited. You didn't know that weaving was prohibited. You didn't know writing was prohibited. Every single one of the categories, the 39 categories, you forgot about. So this would make sense if we say like Rabbi Yochanan, which we saw yesterday, and we talked about it at the beginning of this parak, in that Rabbi Yochanan says that it's possible for someone to know they are transgressing and yet bring a sin offering. If they didn't know the severity, they didn't know that it was a kares level prohibition. So therefore, it's possible that this person knows it's Shabbos and knows they're transgressing, and they bring a sin offering for each one. Since he's mistaken in regards to the level of the prohibition, that it is a kares level, even though that his transgression was intentional in planting and in tilling and in weaving, etc. He knew today was Shabbos, but he thought it's just a prohibition. He didn't realize it was severe enough that the Torah would say that the soul is cut off. And therefore, it counts as an inadvertent sin offering, a sin, and therefore he needs to bring a sin offering. But if we follow Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, which Rish Lakish said that no, and it must be that the act was done inadvertently with a lapse. You didn't know that this was prohibited. So how's it possible you know today is Shabbos? Because if you didn't know it's Shabbos, it's only one sin offering. So you knew that today was Shabbos, and you simply forgot all 39 of the categories of malacha, so you're going to bring 39 sin offerings. So what does it mean that you remembered it was Shabbos? In what way? He holds that you have to be mistaken about the prohibition itself. Vikaris, the other day is Shabbos. Vikaris, and also Karis. So the other day is Shabbos, so this guy knows that it's Shabbos. So b'mai, in regards to what matter does he know it's Shabbos? So as we said yesterday when we had the same question, that according to Rish Lakish, what category is he mistaken about? What category does he know about Shabbos? So we said really the Gemara could answer and say that, and this is important because we're going to understand the concept of principle and principal prohibitions and or categories of work and their toldos, the secondary, that it's possible for a person to know the principal prohibitions. I know that seeding, that putting a seed in the ground is prohibited in Shabbos. That's planting. I learned that. But I didn't know that pruning a plant, in order for it to grow better, is a form of planting, because that's what it takes to grow a plant. You have to put the seed in the ground, and you have to pull the weeds away from around it, and you have to water it, and you have to prune it until it grows and becomes a proper plant producing. So if that's all a part of planting, and I didn't know the secondary categories, so it's possible for somebody to know Shabbos and know principal prohibitions and not know the subcategories, and he's going to bring and he will transgress each one of the subcategories, and as such will bring a sin offering for those. But the Gemara doesn't answer that. The Gemara just says, there is always something to know about Shabbos. For instance, the Yadalei B'Techumin, he knows that you can't travel outside of the Techum, outside of your 2,000 amma your city, or 12,000 amma, whatever the Torah prohibition would be on travel outside of your city. And so he knew the concept that there is a prohibition on Shabbos, but forgot all the rest of the prohibitions and did them all. He will bring a sin offering for each one of the 39 categories. And this would follow, according to Rabbi Akiva, as we'll see, who holds that Techumin, the prohibition of traveling outside of your city, is a Torah.